thank you for joining us tonight for Monday, May 10th, school board meeting. Mr. Romano, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Schaff.
Present.
Mrs. Delaney.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
All present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment, we're going to table that to the end of our meeting so that we can allow a couple individuals that had made intent to come join us this evening, unaware of the 6 p.m. start versus the 7 p.m. start. So we're going to table it to allow them time to arrive. Presentation, Mrs. Adams.
Yep, tonight our team will be presenting on our future focus planning. It's mostly about enrollment, facilities, and some operational changes that we plan for next year that we want your opinion on, as well as staffing. You know, we've been looking at numbers really closely. I want to bring you up to speed now that we've made the official WCOA decision for next year, and are continuing just to go deeply in our planning for our response to COVID and the effects of COVID into the 21-22 school year. So Mr. Overby is going to lead this in absence of Dr. Fultz tonight, and then lots of team members will chime in.
Well, thank you, members of the board and Mrs. Adams and Mr. Romano, and we do want to bring you up to speed on quite a few things tonight, varying topics around the operations and enrollment and things like Mrs. Adams has talked about. Well, first, this is a slide that you've seen very often in our presentations. We're planning to get us back on track in our aspirational goals of moving the district forward, and through the pandemic, and now we're kind of looking at what our response will be moving forward. So tonight, like I said, we'll be talking enrollment, facilities, and operations, and part of that operations conversation will be around technology, some data systems, and some other pieces that we have been planning for next year. So Dr. Fultz, as Mrs. Adams said, has supplied us with some great data to look at for kindergarten enrollment. And one of those pieces is, as of last week of 5/5, 421 kindergartners have enrolled, which is about 100% more than we had previous year. So I think our communications is much better in many ways over the last few years in that sense of getting that word out. So I think part of that may be due to that. And then we were closely monitoring those students who could have gone to kindergarten last year that are now enrolling this year. And we've seen about 38 of those students who have already enrolled within the district. So
in general, our classes are about 600. So when he says it's 105% over last year, it's just really like where we are in the year.
Yes.
It's not that we're having 105% more than kindergartners. It's just kind of where we are.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, just to clarify that.
Just to clarify, we're 105% more on track than we were last year when it comes to.
And like you said, we're not sure, is that because of Jeffrey's communication is just amazing and everyone's responding early, or are we going to see an uptick? That's what we're kind of waiting on.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the numbers on the right-hand side of the table there of 2021 versus 21 and 22. So we've been wanting this, quite honestly, to get students enrolled as fast as we can in the kindergarten so we can properly plan so many pieces of our programming. So this is actually a good thing to get these numbers to where they are right now. So. And then this is another interesting slide here too. As of right now, we do have 70 new students that have enrolled for the 21-22 school year. So in comparison, now we are comparing it to the heart of the pandemic. We had 8 students at this time last year. So 30 students at the elementary level and about 40 students at the middle school and high school level, with a nice increase at the high school of 29. So again, closely monitoring those numbers as well. But as we have aspirational goals to be a destination district, this is a data point that does seem to indicate that people are moving into the district and sending their schools our way. Building to building transfers opened on April 1st and closes in about 5 days on Friday. Again, with board policy. And so an email was sent to all of our building-to-building transfer students last year, that were last year student, or current students this year, that are moving into next year. So we're tracking about, it's amazing, 253 out of buildings and 253 in. So Dr. Foltz over the next few weeks will be closely monitoring those numbers and communicating with families and our staff about those. And then finally, thank you. Open enrollment request opened on May 1st and closes on June 15th. Decisions to parents is by June 30th. The only caveat to that is kindergarten is August 1st. So we sent an email to all those students who are open enrolled in West Clermont, and currently about 112 of those families have already communicated that they wish to return to West Clermont in the 21-22 school year. So that's the enrollment update from Dr. Foltz and his department. Any questions before we move on?
Do we have any data on open enrollment out?
No.
Okay.
That usually happens over time, but it's not something, we did ask in our survey how many families are planning to leave West Clermont, and I think that's a fairly negligible number. So. All right, so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Lance for some of the facilities.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, members of the board. Sorry, all right, getting in the flow. So to start off to talk about operations in particular with facilities, wanted to highlight just a couple of things, and before we get into summer work, wanted to talk to, just give kudos to the teachers and the staff, custodial staff, maintenance staff, with the COVID-related cleaning procedures that we had to implement over the summer and during the year. Definitely a change to our normal practices, but I think everybody did a great job, and that's all staff, our support staff, our teachers, administration, everybody. So I just want to give a shout out on that. As we start talking about the summer work, another thing I would like to highlight is we are working with C&I, Curriculum and Instruction, and their team for summer school. We have met with the head custodians virtually once. We're going to meet in person this week to discuss, to make sure that we've identified the classrooms and the needs for summer school per building, also identify any needs that they may have, so to make sure that the buildings have everything, all the supports that they need, and the teaching staff, et cetera, to make sure our summer school program is going to go extremely well. As we start talking about some of the summer projects here that I just wanted to highlight, part of the coordination and planning with that is around summer school, to make sure that we're not in areas or in parts of the building that may be being used for summer school during the time. So a few projects that I just wanted to highlight for this summer that have been identified. Want to make sure that I say this is not everything. So there are other projects that we will continue to identify, but just wanted to highlight a few that we are actively working on and scheduling right now. Phase 2 for the stadium camera system, the athletic facility outside of West Clermont High School, that will be completed this summer. A lot of things going on at the middle school, which is typical, but the 7th and 8th grade main office in the clinic is getting a touch. We have met with Ross Hudson and his team multiple times to identify what is going to fit their need the best. Definitely with the COVID-related needs of the clinic, definitely found some areas where we could improve the structure, but just couldn't do so during the year, so we're going to make those changes this summer. And as in years past, we're continuing to make sure that the middle school athletic facilities out at the stadium, baseball, softball, soccer, all of those structures continue to receive the attention to try and stay on top of that. We've made great strides over the past 3 to 4 years. We want to continue that momentum, and that place is looking great right now. At Amelia Elementary, we've identified some lighting upgrades in 3 key areas: the gymnasium, the cafe, and the stage, excuse me. All of those areas, we've actually had some work orders, some issues this year that just highlighted that it's just time to make a change. And if we're gonna make that change, why not go ahead and give it the facelift and the 21st century look. The long-term goal will be that, of course, that'll help with utility usage, et cetera, but they're very excited about that. And then highlighting 2 areas district-wide in particular will be concrete repairs and blacktop repairs. I want to highlight in particular that the blacktop repairs is going to start to begin, you will see more discussion about it. I've been working over the past 12 months with a couple of vendors on developing a proper 5 and 10-year blacktop plan for the district, maintenance and replacement district-wide. That is something that we have talked about in years past, and as we transition to the next topic, hopefully we'll be transitioning from reverting funds to roofs and maybe moving funds down to a different area of need, which we have not been focusing on, and quite honestly, that was with intent. So I would like to think that this year will begin the first of 5-year maintenance plan that we've identified, but working with Chuck, he is aware of the plan, and I will make sure that we transition that properly, so hopefully that'll keep the momentum that we've seen in recent years. So before I move on to talking roofing, is there any questions about anything you want me to highlight?
The stadium camera system, is that for events or security?
Security.
Very good.
I'm sorry, yes.
I can chime in that the events camera has also been installed. The Pixelot camera is installed, and it is being dialed in by their organization this coming week.
Okay.
So this week it'll be finalized.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. Roofing. So, over the past 5 years, we have had a roofing plan. Very popular subject, seems to be. You know, half the time when I'm addressing the board is in reference to roofing.
I was gonna say, that map or whatever is not unfamiliar.
Yeah, seen it quite a few times.
Oh, yeah, seen it once or 100 times.
So there are 2 sections of the middle school that we are looking at to replace this summer. The map that you see on this slide is the north building. We have highlighted that section number 1, which is in the top half. Number red 1, that is the section, the area that we are looking to replace. It doesn't show up real well here, but there are letters that are green, and that is to signify that we have actually, those are ones that have been either refurbished or replaced under the current plan. And there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 sections just on this slide alone that either have been repaired or refurbished or replaced over the last 5 years, which shows great progress. This is a map of the south building. The number 8 section is the section that we are looking at replacing. This map is actually twisted sideways a little bit. So the number 1 section is actually, or the number 8 section, I'm sorry, is actually over the cafeteria, the renovated cafeteria from a few years ago. It is getting to the point of dire need, to say the least. We've actually been lucky that we haven't seen other problems come out, or more work orders than what we've already seen, which is quite a few. So with this being said, if we are able to move forward with these 2 replacements, this really puts the middle school, in my opinion, out of, we are changing gears in our maintenance plan. We would begin to start to discuss things such as preventive maintenance work, maybe even refurbishing work instead of replacement work. So this feels very good to see this to the end, or at least this phase to the end. Now, the last thing with roofing for that is to be considered for replacement is the Amelia Elementary and Whitmire, Tabasco shingled roofs. Over the past few years, we have seen quite a bit of an increase in the amount of work orders due to leaks in those areas. I would like to highlight the fact that over the years, even since I've been here, we have had to do repairs, multiple repairs due to wind damage. Those shingled roofs are actually peaked higher in the air and actually take quite the abuse from the weather. And it definitely has been a problem in the past that we have stayed on top of course, but none of that damage warranted an insurance claim, to say the least. So we've stayed on top of it, but over time it has continued to become more and more and more of an issue. At Amelia Elementary is approximately 156 squares of shingles, and Whitmire, Tabasco is 192. I did look up to see, and I talked to Mr. Dyer. Amelia, these are mirrored schools, but Amelia Elementary is a little bit larger in square footage. And the Whitmire, Tabasco school itself, the shingled roof actually goes over the cafeteria, and that was the difference in the square footage there, because it didn't make sense to me, so I wanted to ask that question. The other detail that I wanted to highlight with these roofs in particular is that we will be using O34 funds upon approval, which, if you recall, O34 is the $500,000 set aside for OFCC projects for maintenance. A situation like this is exactly why those funds are there. So this will not have impact on our general fund, but I just wanted to highlight that this will be one of the first major uses of the O34 for the intent and purposes of why it's there. So with that said, we did have a facilities or an operational facilities meeting last week to discuss some of these items, but don't know if we want to.
Any questions?
My question would just center around the funding, and you had mentioned at least for the roofing, that how it comes out of the O34, but can any of this, and this might be a Dan question, does any of this come out of ESSER versus general funds or anything like that, or can it? I mean, these are one-time things, but maybe, but not necessarily COVID related. I don't know how.
So it may be able to fall under the continuity of services section with it, but there are funds available in the permanent improvement fund. So that
We want to use those first. Okay, that makes sense.
Well, and before we move on to the communication section, I just wanted to highlight the team's efforts. I mean, every week it's Lance with his maps, David with his enrollment grids and staffing grids, and kind of Ellie and Mike keeping one hand in the building, and it's a triangle conversation to continue to look at our space to make sure that the spaces we have, the enrollment and the staffing all kind of line up together. And what we're finding is kind of a challenge and a blessing when it comes to elementary in a couple spots, and that is now that we're able to bring back specials in a more robust way, we have the challenge of, in Merwin specifically, the cafeteria and the lunchroom are the same thing. And so more PE in that space with lunch going on poses some challenges. So they have to kind of problem solve and work around that. And several of our schools, because of space, will have art and music on a cart. That's not the worst thing that happens. That happens in schools all over the country. It's just, that's the kind of space limitations that we have. And so that's why it's so important that we're very precise. And while Dr. Foltz is able to take some of the enrollment building to building to kind of free up some space and to relieve some pressures, this team is dedicated every week to staying on top of this and has done a great job. And we look like we're in good shape. We just have those special challenges in elementary that we have to continue to account for. And small group spaces that sometimes just trickle in. So we're staying very much on it, and as you know, enrollment is a wild card, and so we'll just keep doing this until school opens in the fall. So right, with that, is there anything else that you wanted to say about that before Jeffrey?
Well, no, just, it literally is every conversation when we're all together. That's exactly what Mrs. Adams said. Mondays and Fridays, for sure. Summer school is peeking its head in a lot of times now too, but yes, absolutely, those conversations continue to happen. And Mr. Lou Stahl is feeding us information, and then Dr. Foltz is making sure that the grids are always updated and where people are going to be.
So next we have communications update, in particular looking at the district website. If you remember back in December, we did a comprehensive communication audit with family and staff members and asked them all sorts of questions about where do you get information, where do you prefer to get information, who's your best source of information about the district, and open-ended feedback about what do you like, what would you change. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the feedback we got from that. Then I'd like to stroll down memory lane for a minute and talk about the history of the district website, and then talk about some statistics of the website so we can get a sense of some of our needs going into the future. And then I'd like to have a time where the board can provide some feedback as we look towards the future of the district website and give some guidance on what you see are strengths and areas that we need to improve for those. So the communication audit in general, three things came across. First is that people, by and large, are really feel that communication at the district level is very positive. They basically, a lot of people were saying, you know, keep up the good work. I feel like I'm informed. The two areas that people did like specifically mention consistently were the communication needs to be targeted. So in particular, thinking back over the last year with COVID, especially at the beginning, we were just trying to pump out information, and it's like we didn't want to leave anybody off, so we'll just send everything to everybody, which in a crisis moment is one thing, but going forward, we need a strategy that if it's something that is not even, if the content of the communication doesn't have anything to do with preschool, then we really should not be sending it to preschool parents just to add to their email overload. But at the same time, it does need to be clear and inclusive. So when there are things that go out to the entire district, for example, that apply to K-12, we need to clarify, does that also apply for preschool students? Does it apply for students at the Oaks? There are all these different factors, and so when we make a general statement on Friday is a WOW day, there are lots of pieces to that, that if we just make that statement, then people feel left out or not sure, depending on what their situation is. So we need to be targeted, but when it is bigger, we need to be clear about who, including all the various groups. And then the way I kind of describe it is information overload. General consensus is it's too much, it's too long, it's too confusing, too many places. So while they feel like that where communication is great and they're getting lots of information, there was a general sense that I'm getting lots of information, and it can be overwhelming to try to figure out where do I go to get the right answers, and sometimes what the district says, well then my principal sends it out, the same thing, and then the teacher sends the same thing out, and so I've gotten the same message 3 times, and I've got 3 kids at 3 different buildings, so that's 9 times that I've heard that this is going on. So trying to figure out how to be more efficient and with our communication. So that led us to realize that there are really 3 primary areas where we need to, 3 areas of need we have when it comes to communication. And they really have to do with our audience groups. We have a need for the information about the district to be available for the public, for the community members, for realtors, for people considering moving into the district. And that they have a distinct set of needs and are looking for certain information. Then we have parents and students that are looking for information that's different than those in the community or people looking to move into the district. And then we have staff members that are looking for the different information than the other two groups. So really we have three different groups of people that use the district website in particular. And what's become clear is that it doesn't serve any of those three groups well because it's all lumped in together. And so we're looking at trying to figure out how can we rethink and redesign the district website to meet the needs of those three groups. And whether that's one site that has sections for each three groups or if it's different sites for different people, but a clear strategy. So I took some time to think, okay, well, where have we been? And so this is interesting to me to kind of look at the first West Clermont websites went online back in 1997 when Dr. Devine was superintendent. And then 2 years later, or 3 years later, it was updated to include some more pictures of students. And in 2002, it was the biggest redesign that they had seen at the time. And what's interesting is that that particular part of the site was not easy to update. So putting on news and announcements and changing content was not an easy thing. And so it really stayed stagnant for a long time until 2013. So for 11 years, we had the same website. And then in 2013, we redid the district website and made it more modern in the sense. But then again, a few years later, when the district and the new high school and middle school went through their rebranding, we also took the time to redo the district website. So the most recent version of our website was from 2017. And looking forward, kind of moving forward, our plans are to continue to research and develop and test and prototype and build out a solution for the district website that will ideally come out between winter break at the end of this calendar year. So kind of launching January 2022 is the ideal goal. So some statistics to kind of look at, well, what do we know about the people that are visiting our website? And so I went back and looked at some of our analytics from May 9th, 2020 to May 9th, 2021. And what we discovered was that almost 60% of the people that visit our district website are on a mobile device. And a large portion of those, I look here, about almost 50% of those are on iPhone, and then about 25% are on desktops. So those are the top two categories, but overall, taking all the different platforms, 60% of them come from a mobile device. And so that begs the question of how well does our website show up on a mobile device? And you probably know the answer, not well. One of the things that affects it is that the layout is different when you're looking at it on a computer and when you're looking at it on a mobile device. So if you're telling a new family, when you go to the district website, on the right-hand side, there's a link to click here. Well, it's not on the mobile site, it's actually at the bottom. So trying to have a mobile responsive site would be something that we would want to be working towards, since we know that the majority of people that come to our site are not on a desktop. The other thing is that the load time. What I read recently is that 40% of people will leave a website or leave a web page, close it or refresh or do something if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. And the average load time of the pages on our district website is 4.89 seconds. So that tells us that it's not quite optimized in the way it could be to get information loading as quickly as it should. Contrast to that, our Wolfpack Hub, the pages there load in 2.58 seconds on average, so a little bit better. And we look at, well, what do they go to when they go to our website? Obviously, the main first page is the number one hit that happens on the site. And then from there, the high school's school-wide page gets the second largest number of hits, our central enrollment, the middle school. I found interesting, Merwin Elementary, they're the 5th highest page that's looked at on the district website. Then the district staff directory, Amelia and Summerside Elementary's pages, and then transportation, and from down there. So primarily, people are going to individual building sites for things, and then some things like transportation and central enrollment kind of filter to the top as well. On the Wolfpack Hub, the most visited page besides the main page you go to is the COVID dashboard, followed by the updates section where all of the district updates and communications from Superintendent Adams get posted on there. Let's see here. So as we look towards reimagining and rebuilding our district website, I'd like to take just a minute and give the board the opportunity to share some of the strengths that you have about our current website, things that you would say moving forward as we consider a redesign. These are essential. And then what are some of the weaknesses of the current website that you would like to see changed as well? So I open the floor.
How long do we have?
As long as you need.
3-minute timer out.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of our strengths has been how the website has evolved over the years. Back in 2004 or 5, when I got involved with the district, you couldn't find anything out there. And then I thought in 2012, 13, when we had the first edits, I was like, wow, that's really good. 2017 has proven to be really, really beneficial, and we just continue to evolve from there. So I think that our strengths are you continually evolve and add information that's very useful to our parents, and I think that it's robust in many areas. One of the opportunities that I've been begging for since day one is we need to have a central calendar that is encompassing of all of our buildings, so that as we, look to do like a kindergarten orientation, we can see that there's 4 overlapping buildings on the same night, and then we can split and conquer, to make sure that we're all someplace. It also helps parents as they have middle school and high school students to know where we're going to have overlap in bell concerts and, different activities at the buildings. Maybe avoid some problems where we have parent-teacher conferences on the same night during buildings.
Yeah.
So that would be a huge asset to have a district-wide calendar that's maintained and kept up. Thank you.
Yeah, as I've been, for the last few weeks, meeting with various vendors to look at ideas and options for redesign, and that's the number one question I ask is, tell me about your calendar, because that is also an area that I would say is a weakness.
One thing that I don't even know where where it falls to, but our site is not intuitive. You have to, you really have to dig down to find something that should really and I can't even give you an example right now because I haven't had to do it, recently, but when my kids were in school, but it should be very intuitive because you have to go through all the different things at the top and drill down to find things. So I think we just need to be more targeted in how we list things so that it is very, so that it's quick, it's easy, and find it.
Do we have a site map at the bottom that if you knew that you're looking for a calendar or a lunch menu, that you could go to the site map and choose the lunch menu, and it will take you through wherever it is within the site
I
to find
don't
that?
believe so, but that's a good thing for me to do some research on.
Because to your point, if you knew what you were looking for and you went to the site map, you'd be able to
Yeah.
quickly find.
Yeah, and you can't even search things, like if you knew you wanted the calendar and you put in calendar,
Yeah.
it might never take you to a calendar.
Yeah.
Now within 3 seconds.
No, within 3 seconds, right? We're not picky.
I think it would be very helpful for the ability for parents, students, whomever it is, to have a one-stop shop for if they're filling out, for online forms. You know, we have final forms for sports, they're filling out something. I mean, I know things are gonna be changing with our transition to Power School, but it's like we're filling something out in Dazzle, we're filling something out on final forms, we're filling something out. Parents are getting tired of, it's like we should be able to fill something out and it trickle over. I mean, I know the sports one is a little different because there's OHSAA requirements and things like that, and I think they would expect that, but it's like we're filling out the same, you know, when you set up an account, like for your Visa or MasterCard, you go to your bank and they get your profile history, and that carries over to everything, and I think that would be helpful. People want the ability to pay their fees online. We have that ability now with
Easy.
with Easy Pay, but it's not easy. It's really not easy, and it's, 'cause
And I
you,
thought it was.
it is, but I think there's still some idiosyncrasies with it, just because you can't, like, say you've got $1,000 and it's like you need 250 of it to go to a school fee, and you need 300 of it to go to a drama. I mean, it's like you need to be able to, you know, pick and choose your options. So if it's a pay to play, or if it's this, or if it's that, or, and then, you know, so that you're not going in, I mean, there's an administrative fee that's charged with that. Well, if you have to go in and do 3 different things, and you're paying 3 different administrative fees, so if you could pay at one time, and just making it user-friendly.
Well, one thing that I just want to kind of interrupt and point out is it's interesting what you guys are bringing up, because we're talking about the website, and it's everything that goes off the website. And so that's part of like what Mr. Overby is leading this year in data infrastructure, is we're trying to integrate as many things as possible. So for instance, the calendar is all wrapped up in a product that Mr. Perry runs, because it has to do with turning the lights on, the air on, and making sure that when you go to an event, that it's cool, and it works great for that. It doesn't work so great for the calendar, but there's that interdependence. These forms, it's like a whole other program that we enter into for forms, a whole other program that we enter into for payments. And so what we are trying to do, and Mr. Overby will explain some of this, is to try to get that interoperability just stronger, because it all kind of has to be in the hub of the website, but all these different places that it takes us to try to make things more convenient often makes us feel all tangled up. But I mean, you guys, just in this, I think have said 5 different products. And so that's kind of that is our challenge, and that's what we're trying to work through. And we're pretty excited about it, because I think we have some real potential here, but you can see the complexity
Yeah,
as you start to unpack.
It is very complex.
I think the way I've come to understand it, I've been doing a lot of reflection over the last year on trying to be empathetic and think about the end user, and like, what is it like as a parent to get this communication or try to go to the website and do something? And we ask a lot of people to come to the website with a lot of background knowledge, that if you don't understand the acronyms or the terms or the departments, good luck trying to find something. So even like the word central enrollment, we know what central enrollment means, but for a parent that's maybe new to the area, or where English is not their primary language, what is, I don't even know what that is. So we ask a lot of people in order to use the site, you got to know all these things so that it makes sense. You're right, so the user experience needs to be improved, and we also, because of so many different sites, the user experience is different on every site.
On every site.
Yeah.
I know one of the challenges that I had was trying to find which counselor I needed to talk to regarding my student. And in order to do that, you have to have a name, because to go to the staff director, you have to have a name. So you had to go back and find a Friday report that at the very end, it has a list of who to contact if your kid's, what grade or alphabetical name. That's not available on the website. And if people weren't getting that Friday report from the high school principal, how would anybody know which counselor they needed to reach out to? Maybe that they're in the middle school now, looking forward to high school,
Yeah. So our steps, sorry, go ahead.
Anybody else,
Yeah,
Jim or
so
Mike? or
I think
David?
one of the, in my opinion, one of the things for a website is, I mean, it's great to see pictures of kids and all that, but if it's taking away space for usable information, then do away with it. I mean, there was, one of the examples up there had links to the schools, or it looked like what could be links to the schools, instead of having to click once to bring up a list of schools and then click again. So I think part of my thing is less clicks. So having more available to get you right where you want to go. And then also redundancies, so that if you're at an elementary school, let's say you're at Holly Hill, and you want to find something about the district calendar, you go to Holly Hill, but then there's also a link that'll take you to the district calendar on the Holly Hill website, or the page, or you could get to it from the district side. So, but, having those extra links available would be helpful, I think, more user-friendly.
So like you're saying, like an elementary menu, it's gonna be the same regardless of which building you're at.
Or
So
if it
having
is,
it listed
and I don't know
once
if it
versus
is or
7 or
not,
8
but,
times.
if it, but yeah, you could, if you wanna know what the lunch menu is, you can either go from the district to child nutrition from the district, or you can go to there from the school site. And same with staff, where you can find out the staff at just that elementary school, or you can look for staff through the district portal, however.
Yeah, it's hard to find the staff directory, because you have to go to a specific school, and then it's buried down in there. It's not easy to find.
Well, and you have to spell everything correctly, too.
Yes.
That was the challenge I've had, is like, if I
Yes.
just don't know how to spell somebody's name, I'm out of luck.
So if you wanna congratulate somebody for an award that they've received and they weren't specific at which building that they were, like in the article or the news report, you have a hard time finding it. To send them just a quick email just to say congrats.
And something, Jeffrey, that you said about, the acronyms, we have that problem at the company that I work with. We say that, we are the leader in using acronyms.
Oh,
but,
no. IRS.
Yeah, that is probably true.
I'm just saying, but
It's ironic
I'm
that you would
sorry.
answer
Yeah.
that with an
in
acronym.
private sector, you definitely might be.
Yeah, but something too to keep in mind when we're renaming, or when we're making like headers for things, to keep them, a rule of thumb that I have to practice in the Medicare field, is we have to keep things at a 6th grade. We write all letters at a 6th grade, and sometimes it's confusing, like we said, child nutrition. Well, people are looking for a lunch menu, and they're not gonna think to go to, to child nutrition necessarily, but, keep it quick, high level, simple, because it might be the child that's looking for the lunch menu.
I think uniformity across the different sites is key as well. So if you have a site for Clough and Holly Hill, or the district site, or human resources, or child nutrition, that things are in the same place on every site. So if there's a link to the lunch menu, that link is at the same place on every page that you visit, so that you know where it is. And, if you have, I think the example was you have kids at 3 different schools, then you go to the different schools and you know where to look.
Good point.
before, if you can click on one button and it brings up elementary, middle school, high school.
Mhm.
It's all right there, and it's a one-stop shop.
So I think it has to be user-friendly, but it also has to be operator-friendly. To where people can go in, either the principal or the secretary or someone at the district office can go in and make updates easily.
We keep talking about that, because
Yeah,
what
that's-
Jeffrey Rao can do fancy and through coding and everything that he can do versus being able to like scale that work across the buildings is something to keep in mind. So I'm glad you guys brought that up, because we keep talking about it.
And it's not, the current platform and the current way that the site is organized, like structure-wise, it's very difficult to fix some of the issues. And it's what keeps me up at night, because I'm like, I know people cannot find this, but there's no, like when we want to make, for example, an update to something that like goes to all elementaries, that's a 40-minute process of like going to each site,
Well,
opening up
it's
the
a se-
page,
yeah,
making the
it's
correction.
7 updates instead of 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that, yeah. The great thing is that we have a lot of things we can improve on, so we'll be able to improve on those.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what Jeffrey just demonstrated is kind of where we want to get, it is where we want to get when we talk about our students. Jeffrey, and we all notice there's a problem, okay? We're going to go out and research that problem, but we're also going to have data to support what decisions we make, right? So our learners in this situation are forward-facing, people coming into the community, people that are stakeholders, parents in the community, our staff and our students, right? Well, the same thing kind of is holding true. Can you click that for me? When we talk about data. And we get really messy for a long time, and then Natasha goes home and sleeps, I think. I don't know if that happens, to be quite honest with you. And then she comes in the next day and says, hey, we're going to simplify this, and we're going to say, know our students well, and how do we respond? So if we're going to really boil down what we want to get accomplished next year, is we really want to know our students. And actually, it's our learners, both our staff and our students, and how do we respond if there's an issue? How do we respond if they're being very successful? How do we respond if a group of students is being successful or a group of students are not doing well? So, but in order to do that, our core system has to improve. And you mentioned it, and we won't mention vendors and other things, but right now we feel like we're being limited in some ways to siloed systems. Some of our student information is here in one system. Another piece of information is in MAP, let's say, or Naviance or something like that. Like we can list all of these places, but very rarely right now do they talk to each other. So we don't get that individual or that cohort data that we really need across. We want to know their attendance attached to their behavior, attached to another demographic, attached to how many credits they have. Well, right now it's very difficult to do that outside of spreadsheets. So we want to get away from Google Sheets, spreadsheets, things like that, and bring it into a system that is interoperable. So one of the questions, and as you know, we are moving to PowerSchool as our student information system. Outside of Cincinnati Public, we're the first school in the Southwest Ohio that is moving to that system, as I'm looking at our team of people. And part of that is we need something that's interoperable, that's flexible, that gives us some options. So whenever Jeffrey is talking to a vendor around the website, we want to know if it has an API, which Larry might be able to explain that is, like it talks to each other essentially, that automatically updates the contact list. So if we add a new staff member in the SIS, in the student information system, the website automatically talks to it, and that person is added with the right information. We want to see that across our organization. We want to see that in everything that we do, that we're entering at once in eSchool Finance Plus or Unified Talent. And that information then flows to the appropriate places in a highly secure way. One of Larry's prime responsibilities next year is I think we're good with cyber safety. We want to get great with cyber safety. And part of that is student information, right? So we're looking for secure systems that that talk to each other, that have redundancy to it, that then we feel comfortable with that data. And so as we invest, and it truly, you hear that word a lot with Mr. Romano and Mrs. Adams and others, we're truly investing in our systems and our people to make sure that we can find that information. So again, we want interoperability, we want flexibility, we want efficiency, so that we don't have people sitting behind literally three and four screens creating spreadsheets that talk to each other, that if you make one mistake, they don't talk to each other anymore, right? We want this information to be, and then one person owning it all, and that person right now that everybody knows 5099, that's Lou. And we call Lou and say, hey Lou, what can you get us, right? So we want to make sure that we have a system that multiple people know and know well within the organization, and that people can get the information that they need right now at their fingertips. Mrs. Adams and I talk a lot about this, and I have an iPhone. There's two things on there. There's my chart, which I can get in to get a lot of the information that I need about my health and wellness and my kids and my wife and things like that. And then the Apple Fitness, where everything is listed in there, and it's all at your fingertips. And we want systems that, that all stakeholders can get, because there's information that parents need that right now you might have to go to Progress Book for one thing, or you need to go to Schoology for another, or you can't even really get to that current ACT score fast and things like that. We want that really truly to be at our parents' fingertips, our students' fingertips, our staff's fingertips, that they can make informed decisions about. So that's what it really kind of boils down to, is that we're buying systems that talk to each other, that have interoperability to them, so we can respond to student and staff needs. That's really, really simply like what we're trying to. Now, I say simply. It's a tall task. Like Lou right now, and many of you have been through implementations of new software at your places of work. And so right now we're in the implementation phase of the SIS. But at the same time, we need to know that we know that we need to accelerate some things so that teachers have this information and administrators have this information in the 21-22 school year. As I said in the board update, our plan was to get the SIS right, and then add in 22. Well, we don't go small at West Clermont, is what I've learned in my 4 years here, but we do need that information faster. So that's a lot of what we're working on right now. Larry has been a huge asset, along with many others, of talking to Power School and making sure that we are a favored nation, meaning when we buy products that we're getting the best deal that we can get, and that they work well together. That being said, there are some products that maybe Power School isn't up to par with what we need. So we might be moving to a different Naviance type product. It is not a Power School product, but we're trying to find that best product. And oh, by the way, it does communicate back to Power School. How we create our individualized educational plans and our ETRs and things is not in Power School, but it has an API that connects back to Power School. So we're very excited. Lou Stahl is, and many of you know Lou, he's a pretty quiet guy, but when you start talking about the possibilities that we have within the systems and the systems that we're purchasing, he's very excited. So a lot of training. We've kind of made the separation too of training versus professional development. Some of this is flat out training. How do you get to a student? How do you get to a cohort of students? How do you get to a grade level of students? How do you put in a schedule? Those type of things. And then there's professional development that Mrs. Preston and her team in teaching and learning will say, now that we have all this data in front of us, what do we do with it? And we're working now as a cabinet to boil down and bring to our administrators, what do we really want to measure in year 1 versus year 2 versus year 3? Because I think sometimes we just throw everything against the wall, and then sometimes you're just confused and you're kind of inundated with the data that you can't make any decisions. You almost are paralyzed because there's so much. So really, once we get them trained and Mrs. Preston and her team are able to professionally develop them, we're going to really be able to hone in and really work with, like I said many times, individual students, a group of students, a cohort of students as we move through. And because of that, we've shifted some roles. As you know, we've added, not added, in some areas maybe an add, but many times it's shifting a responsibility like mine to oversee data infrastructure. But then Mrs. Preston has somebody on her team that is really working on the analysis and the common assessments and things like that. So it's really, it's exciting. It really is that we're gonna be able to, just like the website has evolved, we're evolving in how we can really know our students and respond to them. And like I said, we could probably get to a lot of this information, but it would take us maybe a couple hours to make one change, whereas our hope and where we are when we report out in, I can't even believe I'm saying 22, right? That we'll say, this is how quickly we can get information to our students, our staff, our parents about their learning pathways. So any questions? I know I threw a lot out there, but any questions about our roadmap, our plan moving forward when it comes to data?
I just want to throw out a comment that really the core of this work, knowing our students well and responding, right now the systems we use, we spend so much time trying to know our students well, we don't have nearly the amount of time to respond. And to be able to get this data in a way that we can get to know those kids more quickly leaves a lot more time for that important response.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Mrs. Adams made a comment to me, what's a comparable kind of industry? And healthcare is one of those, right? And you see all the advancements that they're making in healthcare when it comes to telehealth or with the MyChart and how you can communicate with your caregivers and things like that. I mean, it's a great model for us. Obviously, there's always hiccups in any of these, but it's really been, it's making a middle-aged man go to the doctor more than he's ever had gone before, right? So if we can do that for our staff and our students and our parents to say, we were just in an interview earlier, and I'll stop with this. It's like, when we use all the jargon, some of our parents get confused, right? And they come in not knowing the data, and then we're presenting the data to them right there and then asking their opinion. Well, what if we could get the data to them that we wanted and shoot it to them in the parent portal, or it lives in the parent portal, let's say, and that they can come in and ask us questions? How awesome would that be? That it's not about, oh, my son has a X grade. It's, hey, I noticed in these 3 different evaluations over time, these assessments that you give, that he's not ticking where he needs to be, right? That's a power right there when you can ask those type of questions. So
Yeah,
I
we can identify strengths and weaknesses before, and it can be communicated electronically.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because that grade is kind of almost, it's a terrible term, but like autopsy data in some ways, right? It's almost baked. Whereas if we're having progress monitoring and formative assessments along the way, we can change that trajectory quicker than we can at the end of the grading period when sometimes it's too late. So I could talk about this all night. I get passionate about it. So I think as many of us.
We really are excited, and this is not a challenge that's unique to West Clermont. As he said, there's many organizations and many school districts that we are plagued with this in education. But we are positioned right now because of the talent we have on our team, because of the investments we're making, to really make some headway in this. And we're activating some partners to help support us even outside of education to help strengthen what we're doing. So we really are, I mean, when we are passionate about this and excited. And so definitely more to come, but we will become a district that is, you know, there's this phrase called the DRIP syndrome, data rich, information poor. We don't want to be drips. We want to make sure that we have valuable information that we can act on, that we can respond to. And that's our aim, so that we can know our students well and meet them, meet their needs. So.
And one more thing, looking at Mr. Romano, is that we know we have these core systems in PowerSchool and some other tools. Well, we're working with another company that could, if there's a gap, let's say WC Your Future. WC Your Future is really not going to fit well into a data system like, well, we have a way now to make unique dashboards to say, oh, this many students showed up for this event, and this many students were hired by going to that event. Well, that dashboard we can create with a tool that we're considering purchasing too. So we have some ways to fill in those gaps along the way. So it's pretty exciting stuff. So. Now, Mr. Parise.
If I can get the mic to come on that Mr. Perry turned off. Thank you for your time, Board, Mr. Romano, Mrs. Adams. Quick update on some of the projects we have upcoming. I didn't get it on the list, but the Pixel-Lock camera was one, so I'm glad that Mr. Schaff asked about that. So that should be online this week. It's online. It should be dialed in and ready to go this week. So some of the things we've got coming up. Classroom displays have been a challenge for us. This has been sort of a drumbeat from Mrs. Adams for some time now, that we really need to make this adjustment. We need to make an adjustment to classroom displays. Well, we worked on pilots for the first few months of 2021 in a couple of classrooms in the district to try to come down to a technology footprint that we might move forward with, but because of logistical constraints, you know, the supply chain and things moving slowly, we really didn't get a valuable pilot in those rooms until just recently, where we can really assess. And so we're not ready to make a large commitment to that. At the same time, we cannot allow many of our classrooms to go on using 7, 8, 10, sometimes 11-year-old projectors and classroom displays. They're ineffectual, and they're not serving the students' or the teachers' needs. And so we've put together a plan to go through and replace classroom displays in all of the worst affected buildings, primarily anything that hasn't been built or renovated since the high school went up. So we're talking about Amelia and Holly Hill, Merwin, WT, and a large portion of the middle school. The middle school has had, just from attrition, devices replaced in the last 3 years or so, 2 and 3 years. So those rooms are still very solid, but there are many rooms that are using 7, 8-year-old projectors in those rooms. So we will replace those displays this summer. That's sort of on the roadmap right now. User devices, we have half of the middle school. The Glen Estee Middle School was the original pilot for teacher laptops and docking stations. And then the following year, the Amelia Middle School and both of the high schools received laptops and docking stations, leading up to the opening of the high school and the consolidation of the middle school, so they could at least take technology they knew into those new environments. And so that means that this year, half of the middle school, as of this summer, half of the middle school teachers have 6-year-old laptops, and the other half, and all of the high school, have 5-year-old laptops. And so we are looking at replacing those devices as well. It's time. They served us very well, but they need to go. We need to get them the tools they need to do the job. So the device refresh for those laptops are coming. And then we're looking at administrators as well. Many of those devices are 4 and 5 years old. So we want to make sure that those administrators are equipped too to do the job that they need to do supporting teachers. And then the last piece that we really want to talk about briefly is home connectivity. The Emergency Connectivity Fund was recently passed. That allows for subsidies to home users for the broadband, which is something that we haven't been able to really announce before. So based on certain criteria, one of them is the National School Lunch Program, the Free and Reduced Program. That helps them to qualify. There are some other qualifiers, 135% or less than the federal poverty rate. Those give them qualifications to be able to receive this home broadband subsidy. There is an exemption if you are like past due on bills with the supplier. In the past, some of the programs that were offered last year, if you were past due with bills, the supplier, the Spectrum, or whoever wouldn't give you that service. And there are exemptions for that, for those conditions as well in this plan. There's also up to a $100 one-time computer subsidy, as long as the participant is paying at least $10, but not more than $50 of the device. So that would open up some devices available to families as well. So those are things that we are going to want to push. We're going to push very hard. I know that Mr. Romano has talked to us many times about our Free and Reduced National School Lunch Program and making sure that our families are getting the benefits they deserve and that they need. And this is another way that we can, another case that we can make to really get out that benefit package, or a full list of continuum of benefits that they can receive in that way. So very quick, but if there's any questions at all?
What's the ideal lifetime of a laptop?
It really depends on the quality of the laptop. So the devices we bought back in 2015, 16 were pretty good units. They really were very solid. In fact, some of our teachers have said that they're the best laptops that they have. In fact, some of them are saying, I really don't want to give mine up. But I think when they see the new ones, they might change their mind, right? So, but 4 years, I think, is probably the sweet spot there, about 4 years.
Larry, can you speak to what grade levels will be getting a Chromebook refresh this year too?
Yes, well, we can certainly talk about that. As you all know, our Chromebooks were held up this year. We finally received them in February. They were all distributed by mid to late March. So that was first grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade of this year, okay? So those students will rise a grade level. Next year will be 1st, 5th, and 9th as well. And every year from there on until Chromebooks are no longer a thing or we have some other plan, that's the way that that will roll, and then they'll use them for the 4 years. And so coming, I would say the beginning of this school year, we'll have one grade level that'll have a device older than 2 years old. One grade level will be 3 years old. Their device will be 3 years old. Everybody else, I mean, we'll have 65% of the district will have less than 6-month-old devices at that point.
Thank you. So part of this presentation obviously was to bring you up to speed on many of the projects that we're working on currently and that we're moving towards the summer. But I'll steal another one of Mrs. Adams' lines is we got our hands on the wheel. And we are moving from reacting to COVID to responding to COVID. Examples of summer school and other pieces and, you know, our tech refresh and many of the projects that we're working on right now. So I really feel like we're setting ourselves up to have a busy summer. That's the first thing. To have a very busy summer. In fact, we have our first planning meeting tomorrow, just getting Post-it notes out and mapping out when Mr. Parise is going to be in classrooms, well, his team will be in classrooms to install, let's say, projectors, and when the roof's going to be finished. So all these different pieces of things that we have so we avoid any car wrecks along the way or collisions that figuratively, of course, that could happen with these projects. So we don't have folks standing around waiting, oh, this was supposed to be finished here, and it's not. So that coordination starts tomorrow. So we're ready for the summer. So we'll continue to prioritize our investments in the Onward Upward plan. We're going to continue to recruit and retain the best educators we can. Within about 4 hours of interviews today, actually 5. So just moving through different postings that we have. We'll definitely keep you updated on our kindergarten enrollment. Probably see an uptick before the end of school as people are like, oh, I got to start planning for next year, right? So making sure, we'd love to have a really solid number moving into the summer. And then Dr. Foltz and team will be working on building the building and open enrollment requests to see what we can honor in that space. And then, like I said, a lot of the work this summer obviously is preparing our facilities for a return in 21-22. And any questions, anything?
I think you mentioned
Excuse me?
You mentioned my chart a couple times.
Yes.
And the phone usage for the website. Has there been any talks of like an app that goes in tandem with the website? Because I know that's kind of the direction.
And believe it or not, we do actually have a West Clermont app.
Okay.
I have it.
The central enrollment does tell people when they log in. There was a big push when it first came out, well before my time in this role. But it will be refreshed along because it currently comes from the same vendor that does our district website.
Okay.
So they're kind of a package deal.
I know like most of the time movement from, if there's an app, that's usually what I specifically use. Like, I don't even use websites if there's an app available. So I don't know if like.
Well, and we might end up getting a website that's responsive enough on the phone that it feels like an app
Yeah.
versus like a website. So that's another, trying to like just weigh all that out and not have multiple places just because.
And with Power School, there is, with the parent portal, there is I don't know if it's an app or if it's responsive. It's a website that's responsive.
Next year, I'll be fully involved in all that.
You'll have a lot of feedback for us then, you'll know, experiencing it yourself. That would be very helpful to us.
And one of your questions too, Mrs. Delaney, around like forms, there is we have purchased what is called eCollect, which is part of Power School. So a lot of that over the next year will solve itself. And we're staying with Final Forms for athletics because we didn't want to interfere with all the different pieces that happen in the summer and things
Yeah,
like
we're
that.
trying not to throw the baby out with the bath. We're trying, so we might end up with some legacy products with some new products kind of going simultaneously as things fade, as we understand fully how they work. And so it might be a year or two of figuring out like what needs to disappear what do we cut the oxygen off, and then what do we bring to life? And so we've analyzed a lot, but you can only know so much until you live it. And
Right.
so that's kind of the place we're in. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
That was-
Thanks for your
that was
time.
very helpful.
Thanks.
Nice job.
So in the next section here, we have personnel, and Mr. Overby is going to give an update for David Foltz about our personnel update, and we have actually a live personnel member here in the audience tonight that we can introduce, so.
So as you can see with the Human Resources report, that we do have a couple resignations. And then we also have some new staff employment. And one of those people that's here with us tonight is Mr. Andy I. He is going to become the Assistant Technology Director. So Mr. Parise and I and a few others went through, I think it was a pretty good interview. I know it was a really good interview process. And Mr. I really showed the intangibles that we needed to understand teaching and learning, but also understand the tech world that happens behind the walls. Does that make sense? So in this position, to marry the two of that learning and things. As Mr. Priest just said, with the addition of, we are now K-12 one-to-one, comes with its own challenges and things. So to have Andy and his expertise of, what, 19 years, Andy? 19 years in technology at McNicholas High School, and then coming on board, we're very, very excited to have Mr. I part of our team. So. And then some extended days for some summer work, some supplemental contracts, one unpaid leave of absence, and some school volunteers are also on the report as well.
So the superintendent recommends the approval of the personnel agenda as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Delaney, seconded by Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
In item 5.0 tool, you've heard us use the word Power School a lot today, and this is an agreement where we're asking that you give us the approval through this resolution for the superintendent and the treasurer to execute contracts and agreements for the district. And so these are kind of the third-party kind of extensions to Power School that allow us to now take that student information and use it in more powerful ways. And so it's a combination of testing kind of data that takes it away from state testing and moves it more into classroom testing so that you can see on a dashboard who's meeting the standards, who's not meeting the standards. It also gives us just insights where we're able to connect not only the demographics of the kid, but the experience the kid is having, maybe like what courses they're taking, with then the grades that they're getting, with their perception data. So we're working hard to like bring all that together under one roof. The social emotional, the academic, and these tools are the ones that help us do that. And as the guys mentioned earlier, it's really about getting that data out of something that happens in district office and into the hands of the teachers where it's gonna make the most sense and be the most useful. And so that is really our goal. There's a lot of top-down work and there's a lot of bottom-up work that needs to kind of push toward the middle, and that's our effort. So we're asking that you approve this resolution authorizing us to execute contracts to expand our abilities here with data infrastructure.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley in a second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Item 5.03 is the resolution accepting bids for the roofs, and I just want to thank Mrs. Delaney and Mrs. Brinkman for joining our team on Friday to do a facilities report and get all the ins and outs and the details. In kind of doing a fine-tooth comb work on this today, crossing every T, dotting every I, it came to our attention in talking to our legal team that there was a 2019 Attorney General's opinion that has kind of put a little hamper in the process. Mr. Perry has done a fabulous job covering all the bases in the way that it used to be interpreted, but then there's been a change. And so what we want to do is kind of put a pause in this tonight. We don't want to have you vote on these bids so that we can go back and make sure that we are above board on every step that we're taking following all the rules, all the procedures, and as I said, they've done a very thorough job up to this point. We just found one little extra thing that we need to work through. So is there anything that you would add, Mr.
No,
Romano?
I think that's it. There's a missing link in the chain, and once we put that link in there, we're set.
And now that we know about it, I always say, when you know better, you do better. So, so we know this thing, so we're gonna to make that correction, make that fix, and we'll be bringing it back to you at another time. And that is it for superintendent business tonight.
All right, before we move on to board business, we were going to table the public discussion to allow a few guests that had mentioned that they wanted to come and address the board. I've not seen anybody arrive from that group of people, but we did have Mr. McGraw who joined us. Do you have any interest in public comment? Did you fill out a card or anything?
No, hello.
Perfect, okay. Thank you.
He's just making sure we don't mess up his room.
I will reach out to the people who had made interest in tonight's meeting and make sure that they knew that it was my mistake. I quoted a 7 p.m. start time, which is our business meeting, instead of the 6 p.m. work session. So I'll make sure that they, again, hear my apologies and welcome them to our next meeting if they so wish to come. Okay. Moving on, board business, or do we want to go into executive session? Or do we
Oh, no,
wanna
you
do
can
board
go ahead
business
with your
now?
board business,
Okay.
and we'll move it into executive session after that.
Mr. Chumley, you have anything?
Yeah, thanks for.
Well, we have the operations committee report first. For Mrs. Delaney on item 6.01, just to kind of update, and maybe Mr. Perry can come back to the microphone in case there's any questions, just to report out, even though we weren't able to vote on that tonight, just to kind of cover those details according to you. I know you covered a lot already, Mr. Perry.
I misunderstood. I thought we were.
That's okay. And
I
then
thought
we'll
we were
move into
tabling
board
everything.
That's okay.
Right.
All right. Well, Lance, please help me with all the things that I have here. We met with the Facilities Committee on Friday, and just some high-level call-outs from the reports. The two areas at the middle school, they have had some issues over the last 5 or 6 years. And as Mr. Perry said, that after these two areas are taken care of, this would put us into a normal maintenance schedule instead of a crisis schedule of repairing. Both of the areas that are impacted at the middle school do have student impact because there's classrooms and the cafeteria. So we want to keep the rain off of their heads, so that's an important thing. We talked about on section 1 with that flat roof, there's gravel on top of there that will be repurposed onto the fire lane that had to be added when they connected the two sections of the building. So that was a big plus, that we weren't just getting rid of some raw material that we could repurpose. So that's a nice savings, and it's going to help us to replenish that. So that was the middle school. And then on the Amelia and WT, we talked about the Fund 034 would sustain this. So this is going to be the first time we're dipping into that money that we were required to set aside for OFCC projects. And all work is, once we vote to approve it, we're going to start doing things ASAP where they can be done, and then immediately when the school year ends with August 1, hopefully completion date, weather pending. So.
Great.
Excellent.
Yes,
All
great
right.
job.
I can now
Great
be a
job.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do we have any other committees that we needed to report on?
Not this time.
All right. Now moving on to board
Board
comments.
comments.
Mr. Chung.
So I'll start out by saying welcome aboard, Mr. I, is that right?
Yes, Mr. I.
You're joining a great team. And I want to thank you guys for the update. I'm looking forward to taking advantage of the fruits next year.
No pressure.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Mrs. Delaney.
Welcome to the team, Mr. I. Look forward to working with you, and you have a great team that you're going to be working with. Mr. Ryle, if I would love to help give you more feedback on the website. That's one thing that has been a thorn in my side as a parent, so. And of course, everybody complains to all of us about certain things, so I will send you some more feedback. And just to the team, you know, you guys, you amaze us every day, and we appreciate all your hard work. And as I've said before, COVID has really helped us. I mean, we continue just to sharpen our tools and be better. And this is another opportunity where this is apparent.
Welcome, Mr. I. Thank you for coming tonight as well. Thank you to the team, new, old, joining, leaving. Thank you all very much. Hard work is much appreciated.
Mr. Rudy.
Welcome, Mr. I. I am very excited about the website. My mind's working. I cannot wait to see it. And I'm excited about the roofing project because my classroom at the former middle school had a lot of issues. And the guy explained it all to me that was a good roof, it just needed this, that, and the other, so I'm glad to see everything's going. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we wrap up the school year, we've only got a couple more weeks. I want to extend my sincerest appreciation to you, Mrs. Adams, and your entire leadership team here, as well as every staff member, teacher, support staff, regardless of what role they play in the district. They've done a fantastic job this year. And this has been a challenging year on many fronts, and you guys seem to have pulled it together rather seamlessly and never lost your cool, never had your hair on fire. And it's
Publicly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least not in public.
It's been great to watch because while, you know, you see the surrounding districts and listening to their woes and their issues, and over in Northern Kentucky, I have a family member who's a teacher, and all of their problems, I sit there and say, wow, our district has really pulled it together and has got it going on. So thank you for all of the efforts for the entire district throughout. I had some social time with a couple of our teachers a couple weeks ago with the booster PTO, athletic, whatever that was, event at the high school. And the teachers were expressing how pleased they were with our administration, their principals, and our administrative team, and how supportive they feel. And I think that that was very remarkable. So thank you for everybody's efforts.
Thank you.
Yep. So we do have reason to go into executive session. So I am going to propose a motion to go into executive session to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of employment. And I'm going to ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Schaff. Discussion needed?
We won't need to act on anything. We
Yep.
won't be coming back.
Got it. I was going to make that
Oh, I'm
announcement.
sorry.
That's
Okay,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Roll call?
Sure. Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. We are going to go into an executive session, and we will adjourn immediately following that. We will not be making any votes or any decisions. We're going to adjourn directly after that. Thanks for joining us. Our next meeting, for anybody interested, would be May 24th.
We're all interested.